Welcome to Perspective with Derwin L. Webb. I'm your host, Derwin L. Webb. We are back home at our home location, the Fraser History Museum, and we get a chance to talk to a person that's very important to me. It's not too often you get a chance to talk to a person that's known nationally. That's also my friend too. So for some that don't know him, I'd like to introduce my friend, the district representative, 3rd district representative, Mr. Morgan McGarvey. Mr. McGarvey, please welcome to our show.
Judge, it is great to be here with you.
Man, it's been a long time since we had a chance to talk, and I was talking to some people about how we met.
Yeah.
And the story seems to be different depending upon who's telling the story. What's your version of the story of how we met?
We met when both of us were practicing law, and
I think we were both baby attorneys at the same time.
Baby attorneys practicing law. I was representing the little brother of one of my really good friends from high school who was going through a divorce, and you had his wife at the time.
Correct.
And the way I remember the story is, we're representing these two kids. I mean, they were younger than us, and we were the baby lawyers. They had no kids, they had no assets, but boy, they didn't like each other.
Right. I don't know if you got paid. I know I probably did get paid.
And so we're sitting there. I'm not getting paid. I'm doing a favor for my buddy, and my his brother was my buddy too. But my good friend's little brother. And I remember we couldn't get them together for anything. And I think finally kind of realized neither one of us were getting paid to do this work, and sort of were able to finally get them in the same room and get them separated, which was a fun. But the great thing about it is they got out of their marriage, which needed to happen, successfully. And you and I started a friendship that's lasted since then.
And what's so funny about the whole situation is that I didn't know you. But when I started talking, it was almost like I knew you. We were friends talking back and forth. And I knew at that point that this was going to be a person that was not only going to be a colleague, but someone I could get along with outside of the courtroom as well. So I appreciate the friendship that we developed over this period of time and how we have maintained that friendship throughout these years. When I met you, I didn't know that you were interested in politics because you weren't a politician at that time.
No.
But I knew very quickly that was something that was in your blood. So why did you think about politics? What made you want to get involved?
It's funny because you say that when you're a lawyer, particularly a baby lawyer, and that's a term a lot of us use frequently, the baby lawyer, young lawyer, trying to make your way, figuring out how you're going to do things. That was sort of interrupted for me. And I think at the time I met you, I don't think our kids had been born yet. And so we decided to start a family, and literally 6 months later, we had 2 kids, and that's way too efficient. My wife's water broke at 24 weeks. She was in labor for 10 days. We delivered twins. 14 weeks premature, and that was a real game changer. It was one of those. We went in for our 24-week appointment, and the doctor said everything looks so good. Don't come back for another month. The next day, my wife's water broke, and so we were just blindsided by going from a family of none to a family of 4 and 2 kids in the NICU for 99 days. And for anybody who's ever had a loved one in the hospital or prolonged illness, I think you know what happens. There's a lot of time where you're sitting there thinking, where you are feeling helpless. If you've ever slept in a hospital chair, then you've made promises and you've said prayers. And one of the promises that I made at the time is, we get out of this, we're going to do something to help people in this situation. Now, of course, I had no clue what that meant at the time. But, 99 days, we're in the NICU, we bring the kids home, we're going through all that. And the state senator from my district decides to retire. Now, he decided to retire because he knew that the then president of the Senate, David Williams, was going to take away his Senate seat. They were adversarial. They fought all the time. And sure enough, that's what happened. Redistricting comes out. It's 2012. They wiped that Senate seat off the mat. I didn't give another thought to it, truly. I hadn't given much thought to it at that point, didn't give another thought to it. Well, the map was so bad for both the Senate and the House that year. I don't know if you remember, there was a lawsuit.
I do.
Went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, yeah, these maps are unconstitutional. They threw them out and they said, we're going to give everybody 3 days to file again under the old districts and let the General Assembly sort this out in the coming year. And so I tell people this all the time. I had 3 days to decide whether I was going to run for the state Senate. And in all seriousness, if I'd had a fourth, I might not have done it. But there I was. We've gone through this kind of traumatic experience. I wanted to help people, didn't know how. I threw my hat in the ring and managed to win. Won in a crowded four-way primary, went into the state Senate, and in my first year in the state Senate, we passed the first insurance mandate in over 2 decades in Kentucky, requiring the insurance companies to cover the type of formula that premature babies need to thrive and that people didn't get in Kentucky. And so I didn't think I'd get a second term in the state Senate. When I ran for the state Senate, David Williams was still that Senate president. And he'd already telegraphed what he wanted to do with Louisville in the maps. And I said, I'm going to go, I'm going to make a difference, and I'll probably have to come home. And just, things happen. And when I won in November, before I got sworn in January, Governor Steve Beshear appointed David Williams to a judgeship. He left the Senate. In comes President Robert Stivers to the Senate. We did the redistricting plan the next August, and my district was left intact and was able to run. And now I'm where I am because of those little decisions that happened along the way that allowed this path to open up.
What do you feel was your most memorable accomplishment in the Kentucky State Senate? I know you've done a lot, and I know the first thing you talked about was the insurance.
Yeah.
So I know that was huge.
That was a big one. That was a big one for me because it was my why. It's why I ran. And so I didn't realize how difficult it would be to get accomplished. It's why I ran, though. I wanted to get this. That was a big one. I'll tell you, there's a big one that, success has a lot of fathers, and there were many people involved in this. Joni Jenkins was heavily involved in this, in the House side, others. But Kentucky led the efforts in drug reform. We had a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, and they ended up with a group of 8 of us, and I was one of those 8 legislators from the House and the Senate. We came together. We were the first state in the Southeast to pass a statewide needle exchange. We put money into the addiction courts, which still happen today. We put money into treatment, recognizing you can't incarcerate your way out of this problem. We really did a big paradigm shift at the time for Kentucky that I think shows what's possible when you can get different people to come together around a common cause. In that case, making our communities safer, getting rid of the scourge of the opioid epidemic. That was a major accomplishment, I think, that aside from that first one, I kind of look back at fondly.
For those of the people that are watching this, I'm going to assume that everyone that's not a Kentucky State Senator is watching this.
Yeah.
So describe to me, because I want to know what it's like in Congress now.
Yeah.
Describe for those that are watching what it was like for you to be a Kentucky State Senator at that time.
Yeah, I've never spent a day of my life in the majority. And in my time in the state Senate, I remained in the minority. And what I learned is, you can still get things done even if you're in the minority. But there's a couple of things you got to do. You got to check your ego at the door. You can't care who gets the credit at all. And 2 of the most impactful things I think you can say when you're a legislator, particularly in the minority, whether it's with constituents, whether it's anybody else, you can say, I don't know, and what do you think? It's that ability to listen. I'll give you an example. This is another really proud accomplishment of mine in the state Senate. Remember in 2015, the Supreme Court said everybody can get married. It doesn't matter who you love, you can get married. And it was a huge decision, the right decision in my opinion. Well, then it comes to the state legislatures. And if you know or remember in Kentucky, this was a big deal. We had the county clerk in Rowan County, Kim Davis, who said, I'm not going to marry people. I don't care what the Supreme Court said. She actually went and served time because she refused to marry people in Rowan County until the courts really and truly intervened. Well, it comes to the state legislature because, marriage is really just a state-sanctioned contract. You deal with this all the time, every day. And so we had to change the marriage form. And we had to change the marriage form because now it's changed who can get married. And the state senator from Kim Davis's home district came forward with a bill that was going to create separate but equal marriage licenses.
Okay.
We've been down the road of separate but equal before.
Yes, we have.
And we know it is met with disastrous and discriminatory consequences. And so this is one of those times as a legislator when you just want to get on Twitter or you want to get on social media and scream, or maybe you just want to scream in person. But that's not how you actually change things in a legislative body. It's great to have that outside pressure, but you as a legislator, go into your office place, wherever you work tomorrow, start yelling at the people you work with, calling them names, and then see if they're going to help you the next day.
Right.
So I started going around to my colleagues, listening, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel this is the right way to go? And I kept getting the same answer, or some variation of the same answer, over and over and over again, which was, my constituents, politicians always love to blame their constituents, for things. My constituents want their daughters, it's always their daughters, to be referred to as a bride on their marriage certificate. Okay, we can do that, right? And we can do that in a way that doesn't discriminate against anyone. So if that's a sincerely held belief, so listening to all this feedback and going through people, I came up with a solution, which was one marriage license form that allows you to identify how you would like to be identified on your marriage certificate. I called it the middle school note solution. Circle one, bride, groom, or spouse. We need the records. We need to know who's getting married. We need to have a marriage license form because, again, this is part of actually getting married in a state. And so we did this, and up against major headwinds, against people supporting the two-form solution, I was actually able, by the end of that session, after they passed the two-form solution, to come back around with a whole host of people and get mine passed that was just one form, that didn't discriminate against anybody, that didn't put Kentucky in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons, and I think kept dignity in our marriage process here in Kentucky. And so I think when you're working as a legislator, it takes a lot of both emotional and physical labor to do things like that, but it's really important that you can't give up, that you can't stop fighting, but you've got to do it in a way that's actually geared toward getting things done.
Moving on to your new job now.
Yeah.
What made you think that time was the right time to make that next step?
I think there's a shelf life to serving in for the foreseeable future a perpetual minority in Frankfurt. And I enjoyed every single day I was in the state legislature, and I got out at the right time because I can still say that. And so I enjoyed my time there, but I think there was a shelf life there because there's not a clear path to an immediate majority for the Democrats in Frankfurt. I'm just being realistic about it. They might pick up some seats here or there, and things are eventually going to change, but we're not there yet. And I think so there was that aspect of it just from a personal standpoint. The thing that excites me about this job is what I learned in the state Senate is I love being a legislator. That's really where my focus, my passions, maybe even some of my skill set is. I think it fits that job really well. And so when Congressman Yarmouth, who did an amazing job for our community, when he announced his retirement, I saw an opportunity to try and be a legislator on the federal level. I think like when I ran for the state Senate, you don't know exactly what the job entails until you get it.
Right.
What I tell people about Congress now is we move at a frenetically glacial pace. We go every single day. And it doesn't always feel like you're doing a lot. But when we do act, we do really, really big things. Think about the Affordable Care Act. Think about the Affordable Connectivity Program, which unfortunately the House Republicans are about to let expire right now, that lowered the cost of internet for everybody in the country. Think about the aid package that we just passed, which sent money to Ukraine to help push back against Putin's war, his aggressive war in Ukraine. When we act as Congress, we can do really big things. And of course, it gives me the chance to represent all of my hometown.
Right.
And whether it is making big policy decisions in Washington, whether it's trying to pass bills off the House floor, whether it's really just helping people. We help people every day in this office, from getting their veterans benefits. I had a woman stop me just last week, and she told me, she said, I had worked for 2.5 years to try and get taxes that I was owed by the IRS. I ran up against a brick wall. We received a flyer from your office. I called, and in 2 weeks they'd helped me out. That's an amazing feeling to be the tangible representative of your government here in Louisville. It's a really cool thing.
Hi, I'm Derwin Webb, the host of Perspective with Derwin Webb. Perspective is an energetic exchange of ideas, information, and insight of the state, nation, and world from my perspective and my guests. The weekly show offers a blend of news and newsmakers through the power of conversation. I engage my guests with substantive discussions on a variety of topics, including but not limited to law, politics, health, sports, entertainment, and pop culture. This show offers a fresh, diverse point of view from a diverse group of guests. Set your DVR and join us every Saturday. Perspective with Derwin L. Webb is brought to you by ECHO. ECHO is dedicated to preventing and reducing the incidence and the impact of child abuse. ECHO provides support through advocacy and empowers the voices of children and seeks to create a stronger and safer community. Give me what a typical day looks like for you.
Oh my gosh, a typical day.
If there's such a thing as a typical day.
I'll give you a typical schedule, because
Okay.
people ask about this a lot. And one of the things I liked about being a lawyer, back to when we were baby lawyers, one of the things I liked about being a lawyer is you never know what's walking through the door on any given day, and you get to solve a whole host of problems. I get to scratch that itch as a legislator, because every day you are presented with different problems, even things that arise on the national and global stage. We're dealing with things that when I was running for Congress, I had no idea we'd be dealing with. But a typical schedule is we're in Washington usually about 4 days a week, about 5 out of every 7 weeks. And then we are typically off in August and October for the district work periods. But my typical schedule is I leave on Monday morning. There's a flight out of Louisville at 11 o'clock. Which is a great flight because I'm able to get every kid off to school. I see them, I make them breakfast, they leave. They don't know I'm gone till the evening. So, I leave, I go to Washington, we hit the ground running. And you go all day, every day. When I'm in DC, I'm rarely in my apartment later than 6:30 a.m. I'm rarely there before 10 o'clock at night. I mean, you go when you're there. And then usually if we go up on a Monday, we come back on a Thursday night. Sometimes we go up on a Tuesday and come back on a Friday night, but that's sort of the typical schedule. And what I didn't know about the job going into it was that you really have 2 jobs. So when you go to Washington, it is very policy focused. It's still constituent focused with appropriation requests, but the voting, the committee hearings, the markups that take place there take a lot of your time. So when you're there a finite period of time. It's go, 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 go. Then you come home. Well, you've been in Washington. I'll have somebody say, hey, I haven't seen you in a little while. Well, you did send me to Washington. So when you're here, it's go, 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 including on the weekends, because you've got to squeeze in as much time in the district as you possibly can. And so really when you run for Congress, we're up for election every 2 years.
You're always running.
You're always running. And so you're a congressman in Washington and you're a congressman in Louisville. Both are a full-time job, but typically you've only got 3 or 4 days a week to do that job. And so you've got to squeeze in as much as you can.
What do you feel are the most pressing issues in Kentucky right now?
The most pressing issues in Kentucky, I think, mirror a lot of the most pressing issues in our country. I think housing is a major problem. We're millions of units short in affordable housing in this country. We're tens of thousands of units short here in Louisville and even more than that statewide. I've been passionate about this since the state legislature, so this is a problem we can fix. It's going to take intentional investment. It's going to take investing in housing first policies. It's going to think of this not just little steps. I think we need to have a Marshall Plan for affordable housing in this country. Food insecurity is still a major problem. Look at the number of kids who are food insecure in Jefferson County and across this country. That's why one of the first bill I introduced was the School Meals Expansion Act, to make sure that kids who are going to school are getting fed. And how can you learn if you're hungry, right? I think we still have a ways to go on healthcare. We've done some good things, but healthcare is a human right. And we've got to make sure that people have healthcare, not that your income determines your access to healthcare or your zip code determines your life expectancy. Education obviously is a big concern, and I think when we talk about education, we can't just say education. That's such a broad word. I think there's a couple of things we should do immediately. One, I think we have to re-examine what public education is. For years, we've just said public education is K through 12, and we've sort of accepted that. Maybe it's time to revisit that, and starting a public school option beginning at 3. When you look at the affordable childcare crisis in this country, we know the benefits of early childhood education, and we know that this helps prepare lifelong learners. It helps parents with difficult decisions of whether to work or have childcare. Starting public school and preschool could be a really good answer to this. And then also past 12th grade. And I don't just mean 2 or 4 year colleges. I think again, we've got to talk about those 2 and 4 year degrees, but there's a whole host of really good paying jobs available in the trades and other skills. And so looking at that from a public education perspective is a way I think we can really help.
Well, you talked extensively about all the pressing issues, but how do you prioritize those things? You understanding that you have a limited time, you're one person,
Yeah.
you have a bunch of people helping you make decisions and things like that. But how do you prioritize those pressing issues and trying to get those things accomplished?
Yeah, the first way you sort the legislation you work on in Washington, I think, is by the committees you're on. So I'm on the Small Business and the Veterans Committee. So a lot of what I'm doing is focused on those 2 things. But think about it. If we are doing a better job taking care of our vets who are homeless or housing insecure, and we're finding programs that work, we can scale those to make sure that we're helping other people who have housing insecurity. Same thing with hunger and veterans. Same thing with education benefits and veterans. One of the bills I passed, I was the first Democrat to pass a bill off the House floor this year. I'm the only Democrat that's passed 2 bills off the House floor this year. And the bill I passed was a bill helping veterans with their education benefits. And again, thinking about how we can scale that up. Of course, I think the biggest thing we do in the federal government, the biggest thing we did in state government too, is the budget. At the end of the day, the major power of a legislative body is the power of the purse strings. And so we can talk about our priorities all we want. How we show our seriousness is to invest in them and to have a budget that is looking to grow the economy from the bottom up, the middle out, that's really looking to help the most number of people in this country succeed is something that I think is a major priority.
How do you work with the other side of the aisle? And the reason why I say that is because I'm going to assume that every person that comes into this type of position wants to do good for the other side, wants to do good for his or her constituents. So I'm going to assume that that person is thinking that everyone has the same interests as them. But sometimes you get no from other people. How do you work with the people on the other side of the aisle that don't necessarily have the same political philosophy as you?
Yeah, the same way I did in Frankfurt. Listen, we're not going to agree on everything. You and I are not going to agree on everything. Hell, I'll say it publicly. My wife and I probably are not going to agree on everything. She happens to be right, but we're not going to agree on everything. That's okay. Bipartisanship doesn't mean to agree. It means the willingness to listen. Now, I think Washington has a real problem right now, and that's because of the way Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans organized this Congress. They came in with a slim majority, the same majority Nancy Pelosi had for 2 years when it was one of the most productive Congresses in the last 50 years, but a slim majority. And in order to become Speaker, McCarthy made a lot of changes and made a lot of concessions. And I think the 2 big ones, one that doesn't get a lot of attention, he changed who was on the Rules Committee. The only way you get something to the floor in a House of Representatives where there's 435 people is you either have a rule, which dictates when the bill comes up, how much time there is for debate, all those sorts of things. Or you suspend the rules. We're not very creative in that regard. But you have the suspension of the rules means if you suspend the rules and don't bring a bill to the floor with a rule, it takes a 2/3 majority to pass it. So those are typically reserved for non-controversial items. Well, he put a lot of the House Freedom Caucus and the more extreme Republicans on the Rules Committee, which made it really hard to bring things to the floor. The second thing he did is he changed the rules of the House, and he said that any one member of the majority can bring a motion to vacate the Speaker. Well, think about it. If you're in a leadership position, I don't care if you're at a church or a school or a corporation or a courtroom, you can't be a leader and make everybody happy. And so by saying that any one member could bring up a motion to vacate against the Speaker, it has really made the position a lot weaker, and it's made Washington not work as well. So even though, out of the 435, there's probably 390 people who are willing to work together reasonably well, and certainly 320, 330 of those people are actually trying to get stuff done. But with any one member can challenge the Speaker on any given day, it makes it harder for that vast majority to move a lot of things forward. And so I think it's made it really difficult in Washington this year.
You're our former Kentucky State Senator,
Yeah.
current Congressman, and I know you're well invested in the job that you have right now. but I'm going to ask you to be the soothsayer, the fortune teller.
Yeah.
What's in the future for Morgan McGarvey?
I love my job, and I'm so fortunate. This is the job. I love it. I want to continue to do a good job at it. I want to make a real difference for Louisville. I want to be able to either get on some committees where we can help out, move up in the House. We're a seniority-based body, so that I can truly continue to help our community. Do it for a little while, and then leave it to somebody else. I think John Yarmouth did a beautiful job with that blueprint of going up there, serving, gaining seniority, doing really important work. I mean, his name's on the American Rescue Plan Act,
Right.
and then coming back. And so I don't know what my second act is outside of this yet, but I do want one.
Final question. What do you feel is the biggest challenge that is facing our nation right now?
The biggest challenge facing our nation.
I know we have several.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the most pressing? What keeps you up at night?
I think we're at a hinge point in the American experiment. And I know politicians too frequently say this is the most important election ever. I think it's the most important election of my lifetime. And there's a really clear choice in which direction you want the country to go. We can take, I think, a drastic turn down the road towards division, towards fear, towards hatred. Or we can continue going on the path toward the promise of America, which is a more perfect union, where all men are created equal, and we all have an equal shot at the American dream. What keeps me up at night is where we're going to go on this fork in the road. And I think it will make our job much different in Washington, depending which direction the American public decides to go.
If anyone wants to get in contact with you, how would they contact you with any kind of questions or concerns they may have for you?
Yeah, please reach out to our office. You can reach out to the DC office. It's 202-225-5401. Our district office here in Louisville. I guess actually the easiest way to do it is go to our website, McGarvey.house.gov. It's got all the contact numbers, all the different people you can get a hold of for the different services.
You know, I appreciate coming on the show because you didn't have to come on today, because as I'm listening to you speak, I'm hearing all the things that you're committed to, how you have to be this place, that place, and for you to take the time to come here just to speak to us for a few minutes about your issues, your concerns, the things that you want to see done makes us feel important, because you're a very important person. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your service to the community. Of course, thank you for your friendship.
I will tell you this, as we always say in our program, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what I think. At the end of the day, it's always a matter of perspective. So, Mr. McGarvey, Congressman McGarvey, my friend, thank you for coming on this show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.